this is the problem, is it's not easy to buy. In fact, it's quite hard to buy a well-bred, well brought up, well socialized, well cared for puppy. It is extremely easy to buy a puppy farmed, imported, badly bred, poorly socialized puppy, because they are far more common. Puppy farms and other places are breeding in bulk. They're piling them high. They're not selling them cheap, but they're piling them high. And to pick through all of that, for want of a better word, rubbish, and find that sort of unicorn dog who is perfect is hard.
The decision to bring a new puppy into your life is massive and pretty tricky when it comes to deciding which is the best breed for your family, how they're going to fit in with your lifestyle and with everything else that's involved in day-to-day life. But once that decision's been made, the actual act of buying that puppy and choosing the right breeder to get them from is incredibly difficult. And if you think that it will be a walk in the park, then just have a listen to this.
And then the other thing that they do is they hire a family home. So a family home is rented, an Airbnb or something, for like a month or so, and they move litters in and out of that house for that period of time. So people come, see this lovely family environment, lovely little puppies, maybe an adult dog mooching about, whether it belongs to those puppies or not, it doesn't really matter. And, you just think that's bananas that people are going to that effort, but there's such a lot of money in it. Thousands and thousands of pounds per puppy.
Welcome to the Call the Vet Show, the podcast that helps keep your furry family as healthy as possible so they can live the full and happy life they deserve. And here's your host, veterinarian Dr. Alex Avery.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Call the Vet Show, the podcast that helps you to optimise your pet's health so that they can really and truly live the full and happy life that they deserve. And the voice that you've just been hearing is the amazing Kat the Vet. Now, if you don't know who Kat the Vet is, you really need to. She's a veterinarian in the UK, but she's also a huge animal advocate who speaks out for the welfare of her patients and the pet population across the globe, really tackling some of the most difficult and at times challenging topics, and it makes us all think about where we should really be heading when it comes to raising and caring for our pets. And today we're talking all about how to choose the perfect puppy for your family, how to make sure that they're as healthy as possible when you actually receive them, and how to avoid supporting the puppy mills, the puppy farmers, the illegal importers of puppies who are really going to extreme lengths to try and trick you and con you out of your money and provide you with a puppy who won't be the dog that you hope for. And just before we jump into our chat, make sure you hit that subscribe button on whichever podcasting app you're listening to. And also make sure you share this with anybody you know who is looking for a puppy to make sure that they're not caught out. But that's it from now with the intro. Let's jump into our conversation. So, Kat, welcome to the podcast. Really excited for our chat today.
Thank you ever so much for having me. I'm really pleased to be here.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So you do so much stuff online. You're prolific across all kinds of different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, lots of live chats and that kind of thing. And so I thought it'd be interesting just to dive into how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so I've been a vet for quite a while, over 15 years now, and I work in small animal practice, so I just do pets. So the bulk of my work is being a vet in real life. But it wasn't long after I had graduated that I sort of felt like I could do more than just be a vet in real life. And when I started blogging and writing online, one of the driving factors was because I felt there wasn't enough of a veterinary voice, sensible, science-based, evidence-based, good advice for pets online. So you can tell how long ago this was because there's lots and lots of stuff out there now. But at the time, there was very little. And it really frustrated me because the anti-vaxxer messages and all of that were everywhere, gaining loads of traction, and nobody seemed to be presenting the other side of the story. So that was really the driving force behind getting started. Yeah. And then, like you say, over the years it's kind of grown, and now it's still not the bulk of the work that I do. I'm still a vet in practice, but it is obviously a large part of my life. And I have a website where I write regularly, a Facebook page, and Instagram. And I still do what I have always done, which is I am passionate about pets and the veterinary profession and being able to communicate messages of good health and welfare and, how to care for your pets properly from a well-qualified veterinary voice. And I really enjoyed doing it, and I love the fact that people like it, and every so often people don't like it, and that's less pleasant because you end up, you can open yourself up, unfortunately, to people with opposing views who aren't always terribly nice to you. Some people get quite passionate about vaccinations and what we should feed our pets and that sort of thing. So you do have to develop a bit of a tough skin sometimes, and it isn't always that pleasant, but I still think it's really important. And now I think there's loads more people doing it, which I really, really welcome, because I think, like I say, it's so important for that sensible advice to be out there for ordinary pet owners. Yeah,
absolutely. I think your passion for the pets is what shines through with your content. You really are kind of their advocate, if you like, which is really important. And I think even now, although there are more people doing it, I started this kind of 3 years ago. So, I've not been in the game quite so long, but, on YouTube and things, there was really nothing at all. There's just so much of the other content that it's important that more vets, I think, step up to kind of help provide a bit more of a voice, because it's such an important message. So with that in mind, we're going to be talking about the big topic of bringing a new dog, potentially a puppy, into your family. There's been a lot of people over lockdown the last year who have brought a dog into their house, and maybe they weren't, planning on it. And there's been a lot of horror stories as well. And then with Christmas just around the corner, we get the whole gift giving and that kind of thing. So let's start off maybe with how to choose the right dog. Is a dog right for you, and what's the right breed? Because there's a lot that needs to go into this decision, isn't there? Huge amounts of research need to be done before you buy a puppy or rescue a dog, however you're going to get one. And I think I think a lot of people do quite a bit of research. So I think that when people decide to get a dog, the vast majority of people do think about this concept of getting a dog quite carefully. So I find most people, the idea of the dog is not an impulse purchase. So I think most people do think, can we have a dog in our lives? Have I got the time to walk it? Have I got the space to look after it? And then I think now the messaging is getting through. So they think, well, what breed should I have? So I think there is quite a lot of research that happens, and there's loads of fabulous resources online. Should you have a Springer Spaniel or a Cocker Spaniel who are full of energy? Are you more a staffy type of a person? Are you after more of a lap dog like a Cavy, or dare I say it, a Chihuahua or something like that? Or the Cockapoos, which are just, or anything poo. You never see an actual poodle anymore, do you? There's just the poo part of the poodle that exists with all sorts of crossbreeds. So I think a lot of people do actually put a reasonable amount of research into what kind of dog. Where it falls down is once the decision has been made, we are going to own a Cockapoo, they then just Google Cockapoos for sale and buy the first one. And that is where the problems come. I'm sure you've seen some patients that have got pretty tragic stories and clients who have ended up devastated. So what kind of pitfalls are people falling into? What's the result of making that purchase from the wrong person?
Well, this is the problem, is it's not easy to buy. In fact, it's quite hard to buy a well-bred, well brought up, well socialized, well cared for puppy. It is extremely easy to buy a puppy farmed, imported, badly bred, poorly socialized puppy, because they are far more common. Puppy farms and other places are breeding in bulk. They're piling them high. They're not selling them cheap, but they're piling them high. And to pick through all of that, for want of a better word, rubbish, and find that sort of unicorn dog who is perfect is hard. And that's why people either don't even try, or they try a little bit, realise how hard it is, and then go, well, we just want a dog and it doesn't really matter where it's been bred, because once we have it, we're going to love it and everything's going to be totally fine, and I'm just going to buy that one. And I'm not really going to think too hard about where it's been before it came to me. Yeah. But of course, how that puppy is bred, and particularly, as you know, how that puppy is handled and how the mother is handled in that 6 to 8 week period before it is sold, is hugely impactful on the rest of its life, both from a health perspective. So we've all heard those tragic stories of the puppy being handed over at a service station, looking a bit peaky. Oh, it's just a bit car sick, getting it home. Within 24 hours, it's in the vet on a drip, and then it's dead of parvovirus. We've all heard those stories.
Yeah.
And, I've run out of patience for them now. So when I see those stories online, I don't think, oh gosh, how tragic and terrible for the family and the poor children who'd fallen in love. I just think, what idiots. I've run out of sympathy.
Yeah, the message is out there, isn't there?
There is no excuse. There is no excuse to make that kind of purchase at all.
Yeah.
So the only sort of entity in that story I have any sympathy for is the puppy themselves, and obviously the bitch from whom it was bred, who presumably is in an equally awful position but still alive.
And history's just going to repeat itself as well, isn't it? There's going to be, the next litter is going to be the same.
Exactly. So that sort of story is great for spreading awareness of how not to do it, but I just think it's inexcusable.
Yeah.
What's more common is the puppy. I saw one last, you see this is a really common story. So family gets a puppy, all seems fine. The breeder has, the breeders of these animals read all the advice online as well. So they go and they've, got some questions. We've been told that we must ask these special questions. And the breeder says, of course, they've been born in the kitchen. My children have played with them every day. They're just such a lovely litter. And they sit in this kitchen and there's a playpen of puppies. And there's a few of them looking, where's mum? Oh, she's out for a walk. Or, oh, she doesn't really like them anymore. And they're like, okay, cool. When can I take one? Well, you can take it now. Do you want it now? Do you want it now? The kids really like it. Do you want it now? That'll be... Well, I mean, I used to say, that'll be £800 in cash. But over lockdown, the puppies in the UK have gone completely bananas. They're now £2,500 in cash. And then they get bundled out of the door with this lovely little puppy. And they've asked the right questions. And the puppy comes vaccinated, wormed and microchipped. Because if you're selling a puppy for £2,500, to spend 50 quid on some wormers and a microchip and a vaccine is nothing.
Yeah.
And then they get the puppy home. And then it's a bit peaky. And then they bring it to the vets. And then, it's got some fleas and some ear mites. And it might have got a touch of kennel cough. Or it seems kind of fine, but it's a bit bitey or it's a bit nervous. And sometimes I think the families don't ever realise what they have done.
No.
Because the puppies there's this whole, and especially now we're breeding a lot of the poodle-oodle things. They're not awful dogs. They're just not quite right.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you in where you are, but the cockapoos now are becoming hugely common in the UK. And they are becoming more and more notorious for anxiety issues. They're hugely overrepresented for behavioural referrals now, even over and above the bulk of the numbers. And that's the problem. That is the issue, is that it's the behaviour that's the biggest issue. I think we used to see a lot of puppy farmed Labradors who would all pitch out with hip dysplasia and elbow dysplasia and, German Shepherds with slopey backs and Cocker Spaniels with epilepsy and all, sort of easy diagnosable, put a name on it, disease. But I think now there's just this huge number of dogs who the families just sometimes don't even realise that their lives are harder than they could be because they haven't been socialised well when they were first born. The mother hasn't been selected for being mentally stable or behavioural. She's just been selected for having a uterus and nothing else.
Yeah.
And so the puppies just aren't quite right. And some of do okay. They turn out all right. And the family loves them and everything is fine. But a lot of them don't. And, then they go into rescue because they're a bit too much. And it can take a long, long time. And sometimes almost never are the pieces of that puzzle put together and people think, actually, I think we made, the problem started when we bought this.
Yeah, they don't realise they've been conned effectively and what they were told was a bunch of lies and the impacts are huge. And I think kind of one statistics, and we know how reliable statistics can be, is that the biggest cause of death and rehoming in dogs under 3 years of age is behavioural problems. So we don't think of that as a medical issue or as, they're maybe a bit naughty, but the impact of that on the dog's life and on the human animal bond are just massive. So from that point of view, I guess people need to be patient when they decide what breed is right for them, they need to think, well, this might be a 12, 18-month process of finding the right dog. We're kind of talking about that kind of time frame, because you might find an ideal breeder, but they've only got 1 or 2 bitches. They maybe don't breed them every season. So it can take quite a long time. And then they need to, ideally, I guess, be seeing those puppies when they're young with their mother, and maybe having several visits so that they can, it's harder to fool people on multiple visits, isn't it, than just a one and done.
Oh, hugely. If you can Google cockapoos for sale near me, find one, visit the next day and buy it, you absolutely don't want that puppy. If it is easy to buy, do not buy it. And that's where I think that this, all this lovely research and advice falls down, because people have planned for a while to get one. They've discussed it with the family. They've picked a breed. They've looked at the pictures online. They've done their research, and now they want to buy the dog. They've, all that decision making has been done. And that final piece of the puzzle, if you then turn around to your kids who've, been begging you for a dog, and you say, kids, we're going to get a dog in a year. It's not going to go down well, is it? And that's where the puppy farmers and the puppy importers thrive. You've got to be prepared that it's going to take you a long time to actually find the right dog to buy. And you're absolutely right. I think you have to create a relationship with a breeder, have them recommended to you personally. If you know that, ring your local vets for good breeders. So they, vets do know them. Do your research, find them, get on a waiting list. And I think in this day and age of like texting, who picks up the phone and talks to their best friend to sort of create some sort of relationship with a complete stranger over a dog? I can see why people just want to scuttle in, buy it and scuttle back out again, and not have to get into any sort of conversation. So that's the key. It's hard to buy a well-bred dog, and it will take you time, and you have to be incredibly picky and fussy. And the other really unfortunate thing is you have to be massively cynical, on your guard, ready and prepared to walk away. And that's the hardest thing. If you're in that kitchen with that playpen of puppies who look super cute, and the kids are going crazy, and the lady's answering all of your questions, but the mum's not there. The kitchen's quite clean. If these puppies have been living there for 2 months, it should be a bit stinky.
Yeah, there's a puppy smell, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. All of those things. You need to go away and think, if the breeder says, do you want to take the puppy now? And you hand over the cash and take the puppy, you don't want to take the puppy. You want to go away, think about it. Think how you buy a car. If you take it for a test drive, you ask loads of questions, and then you go, we're just going to think about it. Yeah. And off you toddle and you think about it. And then you might ring them back and say, yeah, I'll have it. Or you might think, actually, I'm going to leave it a week and just see. So you have to have that kind of...
Yeah, and you mentioned something earlier that you need to find a breeder, you need to go on the waiting list. And that is crucial, because good breeders, you can't get the next puppy from the next litter because they've already got a waiting list that's as long as your arm. So they can't provide puppies willy-nilly, like you say, off the shelf. So a good breeder, you're going to need to go on a waiting list. They're also going to be more than happy to send you photos of the puppy growing up every day, and here's it playing with mum, here's it having a drink, here's it sleeping. They're really advocates for their puppies, because they want them to go to a good home as well. So you might also find that actually the breeder is asking you just as many questions, because they want to be sure that you're the right owner for their puppy. So they're doing a bit of selection there, whereas other people are just wanting to get them out the door, like you say.
Exactly. And that's where it gets quite awkward. And you're like, well, I found a lovely Labrador bred by a terribly posh lady in a beautiful house in the middle of the countryside, but she's asking me lots of questions. People are like, well, why would I not pick? Why wouldn't you give me one of your dogs? It is a real process to go through, and it's not the easiest, but absolutely, the way that puppy is bred, the experiences it has right from the moment of being born. They might not be able to see, but they can smell. And then eventually they get their sight and their hearing. All of those experiences impact hugely on their development. And that's so, so important. If you want a dog to live in your family home and be part of your family, then that's where it needs to start its life. Not in a shed. And not in a shed anywhere. Not in a shed in this country, not in a shed abroad and then transported thousands of miles over land, which is the issue we have in the UK with these huge European puppy farm problems, not taken away from its mum at 5 or 6 weeks old and imported illegally. That's the other issue we have in the UK, is that they should be vaccinated against rabies, but they're probably not, all of them. And do you want to be the person who buys the first rabid puppy in UK because it's been illegally imported? No. And the other thing is, you know, going back a bit to how the breeders will con you, it's phenomenal how the effort that these backyard and puppy farm breeders will go to sell you a puppy that they will try to convince you is homebred. Yep. So there was a report by the RSPCA. They raided a house that they suspected of selling puppies. They found in that house 20 mobile phones, all pay as you go. On the back of each phone was the name of a breed. And they said in the end they had to turn all the phones off because they went so often. They couldn't hear themselves think. There was a phone ringing all the time. And it was just some, you know, and obviously it was an organised criminal activity. They would pick the phone up, look at the back. This is about the Shih Tzus, ring it. I'm calling about, oh, they're Shih Tzus. Yeah, they're lovely, you know. And there was 20 different mobiles on this kitchen table. And then the other thing that they do is they hire a family home. So a family home is rented, an Airbnb or something, for like a month or so, and they move litters in and out of that house for that period of time. So people come, see this lovely family environment, lovely little puppies, maybe an adult dog mooching about, whether it belongs to those puppies or not, it doesn't really matter. And, you know, you just think that's bananas that people are going to that effort, but there's such a lot of money in it. Thousands and thousands of pounds per puppy, you know, which if they're bred in Europe and then imported, you know, they can be sold for a few €100 over there and then sold on again here for a few £1,000s. You can see why. Yeah,
well, it's big business, isn't it?
Humongous. And this is why they make all the effort. And this is why they're desperate to fool you. And this is why, unfortunately, you have to be on your guard. You have to be prepared to walk away. You do not want to buy the puppy on the first visit. Yeah. You know, all of those things. Because, you know, again, quite aside from the fact that you might be saddling yourself with an unhealthy dog or a behaviourally challenging dog, you are supporting an industry which is built on animal cruelty.
And I guess that's the message as well, because there's some people who they'll go and they'll visit the puppy and they'll recognise it for what it is, and it's, you know, it's a bit peaky, it's, you know, maybe a little bit thin, and they'll go, oh, I can't leave it in this condition. I feel so sorry for it. I need to take it away. But the take-home message there is that while you're potentially helping that one puppy, all you're doing is encouraging the people to keep going, and it's going to be replaced by the next one within 24 hours, if not sooner. So, you know, you have to have a little bit of a hard heart from that point of view, and in the moment thinking of the greater good, really.
Oh yeah, really, I rescued him. You know, conversation that we've all vets have had. You know, like, there's a bit of a scrappy little scrap of fluff here with its ear mites and its fleas and its underweight and its bloated belly full of worms. They go, well, I couldn't leave him. Really, I feel like I rescued him. And you're like, well, did you pay several £1,000s and buy him and fuel this trade? But by the time people get into the vet practice, and we've seen it all before, it's done. You know, the puppy is bought. They're never going to send it back. In my entire career, I have had one person return a pet that they purchased, and that was a cat. No,
once they're in the home, they're in the home. They're not going anywhere, are they? So you mentioned before we kind of started recording this about the DEFRA campaign, the spot seller pet old enough treatment. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because you know, it sounds like quite a handy mnemonic and some things that people should be thinking about without having to remember a whole ream of stuff.
Yes. So I was very pleased earlier this year to be asked by DEFRA, who are the UK government's arm for sort of animal and farming and environmental related issues, to join their Pet Fished campaign, which is a play on words of catfished. And what they're trying to do is help people to understand that they've got to, you know, be really, you know, it's massively buyer beware when you're purchasing any animal online, be it a puppy or a kitten or a rescue dog or anything. And yes, they've come up with this really neat saying, SPOT. So S stands for seller. Do you trust them? Are they asking all the right questions? One really cool tip is take the mobile phone number, because it's always a mobile, and Google it. Google the number And if that number is being used in multiple adverts across several platforms, often for lots of different breeds, huge red flag, walk away. And then P is for the parent. There should always be a dog there with the puppies or kittens, but particularly for puppies. And that dog has to be interested in them. Again, the same stories come up. Well, they're 8 weeks old, so the mum's not really interested in them anymore. So even if there is an adult dog mooching around, even if you are presented with one, it probably isn't the parent, and now, all these poodly oodle things that are sold, even if it doesn't even look like them, they just say, oh, well, they look like the dad, because when they're mixers, the looks can be really different. So it's a huge excuse. So, where are the parents if that dog genuinely interested in the puppies? Like you say, can they send you pictures of those puppies growing up and clearly being mothered by their mother? And then O is for old enough. Puppies really shouldn't leave their mum and the rest of the litter till 8 weeks. And that's mainly from a behavioural point of view, is that they learn huge amounts of doggy manners and doggy behaviour and doggy communication in that final sort of 6 to 8 week period where they're no longer little sort of real squirts and they're growing up into being little sort of toddler puppies or, older. And if they miss out on that period of socialisation, again, it can impact behaviourally hugely. So that's the period when, breeders do want rid. Their mum isn't feeding them anymore. They are eating, they're pooing everywhere. They're big enough to cause trouble. They are a bit of a pain in the neck by that point, especially if you've got a litter of 8 or 9. But good breeders will keep them because they will understand how important that is. Yeah. And again, every vet has been presented with a puppy or a kitten or whatever that's been, and you sort of look at this tiny little thing in your hand and you're like, well, how old is this? And they say, oh, it's 8 weeks old. The breeder said 8 weeks. Again, they've been given the right answer. They asked the question. The answer was right. Yeah. It was just a lie. And you're like, well, no, I don't. I think you'd better take some of this replacement milk and,
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the T is for treatment. Are they vaccinated? Have they been wormed? Can you take a vaccine card that's been signed and stamped and branded to a veterinary practice? Have they got a microchip? All of those things. But like I said before, that's still not perfect because the cost involved of doing that, as opposed to the price that you're going to pay for the puppy, it's actually to give themselves the veneer of respectability and vaccinate, worm and microchip these puppies is not expensive, in comparison to the price you're going to pay. So it's that the treatment side, the treatment is very important, but it's,
yeah, you don't want to use that as the be all and end all that they've seen a vet, so they must be fine, they must be healthy because, well, I mean, even you can fake documents as well, I guess, if you really
you can fake documents, and there are and these sometimes these puppies do pass through veterinary practice, unfortunately, without any red flags being raised, even at that stage.
Yeah.
So I think you really, really have to be fussy, be patient, be cynical, and be prepared for it to take a long time.
Yeah, because we as vets, if we're seeing them as a snapshot, and if they actually seem healthy for that half hour, then they're going to be passed off as healthy, and you don't know the back history and you don't know how they've been brought up and you don't see the parents, and we're seeing that snapshot. So it's kind of an instant picture of seems pretty healthy, and here is your injection and microchip and off you go.
Exactly. And they maybe haven't even seen a vet because not all puppies are vaccinated. Vaccines start at 8 weeks old, and so a lot of puppies are sold unvaccinated, which is perfectly fine because they're still going to have some protection from their mother's milk. And a lot of breeders say to people, well, if you've got a vet, you may as well start and finish that vaccine course with your vet. And actually that's a perfectly justifiable course of action, so that's okay. So they might not have a vaccine card, and that's all right. You can buy wormers online, you can now buy microchips online and chip them yourself. So it is possible, even with some degree of medical care, they haven't actually been
through a vet clinic,
looked at by a vet at all. Yeah, there's such a lot.
It's just difficult, isn't it? It is difficult, and people, I mean, it's easy to say, people shouldn't be doing this, but by and large, they are going in with the best intentions, and they're being fooled. And I guess our puppy farmers and things, they are, ever trying to keep one step ahead. So, like you say, they wouldn't have been hiring out family homes 10 or 15 years ago, probably, or maybe I'm being naive at thinking that, but they're getting more advanced at tricking people as well as this message is getting out. So This time of year as well, we're thinking about puppies and presents, and the Dogs Trust of Puppies for Life, not just for Christmas. I think it's the Dogs Trust that coined that phrase. Should people give puppies for Christmas presents? Is that ever right?
Well, yes, the Dogs Trust campaign has been going something ridiculous like 25 or 30 years, and they still say it every year. So you think, well, nobody's really listening, are they? But, well, no. I think the answer to that question is yes, and also no. So no, a dog should never be a gift. It's not a surprise present.
Yeah.
Here, have a puppy, a 12 to 15 year commitment, and off you go, and it's going to poo on your carpets, and you're going to need to walk it on Boxing Day or play with it on Boxing Day when you're feeling hungover and you don't want to move. So obviously, puppies aren't gifts. Obviously, but we still need to say that every year, because every year one is, bundled in a box under the Christmas tree. Everybody opens, it's amazing on, Instagram and YouTube, gets loads of likes, and then Boxing Day it, vomits on the rug, and suddenly it's less keen. But if you have made that decision and thought about it carefully, and then think, well, maybe Christmas would be a good idea to get one, but it's not really a gift. It's just the time of year. I can understand why people make that sort of connection and say, well, we're thinking about getting one and the kids really want one, so let's kill two birds with one stone and get one around Christmas time. And on the one hand, if you've done it all properly, if you've followed our advice and you've found a breeder and all of that jazz, fabulous. On the other hand, no, it's not an ideal time to introduce a puppy. You have just stuck 6 foot of fir tree up in your living room, whether it's real or fake, covered it in glass baubles and electric lights, and then in comes an 8-week-old puppy with sharp teeth and chewing everything, and you can just see what a disaster that's going to be. And it's a period of the year, maybe not this year, but where there's a lot of upheaval, lots of visiting, lots of visitors, lots of food about. It's really crazy Christmas, isn't it? So to introduce a young puppy to that sort of home environment, again, isn't ideal. But the flip side of the coin is you've got 2 weeks off for Christmas, or you guys probably have like 6 weeks off for Christmas, don't you? So to have the family around and for everyone to be around when a new puppy comes into the house is a good idea. So you can help them through that transition period of leaving the litter and coming to the home. So is it a perfect time of year? No. Can I understand why people buy them? Yes. But there are a lot of pros and cons to buying a puppy at Christmas. And certainly the messaging is always out there because, like you say, Boxing Day rolls around and you're just waiting for the story to appear online.
And it happens to Boxing Day it happens every year, doesn't it? And you think, how on earth is that still happening? So yeah, absolutely never as a surprise gift, because it's the worst gift ever. You're giving someone, like you say, a commitment that needs to last for 15 years. It's going to cost them thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever it is in your country. And if you don't want one, or if you did want one, you'd have already been in the process of getting one yourself. You don't need someone to give you something like that. Exactly.
And good breeders don't breed at Christmas. They deliberately avoid it because they don't want to sell to impulse purchasers and overexcited families and that sort of thing. But, plenty of bad breeders will. And, 2 months before Christmas, they're ramping up their breeding programs to get those 8-week-old puppies out and ready for sale.
Because they're just like any product, we need to ramp up production because it's Christmas and that's when people get their wallets out. And puppies are unfortunately just a commodity.
Exactly. Do you want to buy your next family member from someone who thinks of them as a commodity, or do you want to buy it from someone who thinks of them as a precious new life? It just sort of doesn't matter which way you cut this cake. You have to be prepared to put the work in to get out of it what you wish.
That's some amazing information. I think everyone can tell how fed up we get as well when we see these cases, because the history does just repeat itself, and it might come across that we're a little bit harsh in a way, but it does happen. And sometimes I think people need a bit of tough love and told that this is how it is. And actually you're supporting really bad practices and bad people and the conditions of these puppies and these bitches, which I think often gets forgotten about. You've got these bitches in crates in dirty, squalid conditions, and what a life they lead. It's, it doesn't bear thinking about. So Kat, to kind of finish up with, because I know you're so passionate about so many different aspects. And one thing that I've seen you do a lot of recently is ear cropping. So this isn't something that I've come across at all. When I was in the UK, I don't remember seeing any dog with cropped ears. I could think of it as an American issue that they need to deal with. But yeah, what's that all about?
Well, yes. And I think you're right. You know, if you left the UK 3 years ago, you probably weren't seeing very much ear cropping, but we are seeing a huge increase at the moment. So ear cropping is the practice of chopping off dogs' ears, which is as ridiculous as it sounds when you say that. And there's two main types. One is almost exclusively in pedigree bred Dobermans. Yep. Who the classic sort of American Doberman with very sticky up, sharp pointed ears and also no tail. There's a few breeders in the UK which are now, because ear cropping is illegal. It is illegal in the UK and it has been illegal for over 100 years. Tail docking is also illegal unless under some very specific circumstances for working dogs, and that legislation is about 7 or 8 years old now. But thanks to the internet and thanks to Instagram and pictures, like you say, it's common in America and other countries. And we have got this global society now. So we are seeing cropped dogs being imported into the UK because people have seen them online and want them. Yeah. And there's two types of cropping happening. The first is in a small number of pedigree Doberman breeders who believe that this is how a Doberman must look. And so what they are doing, and unfortunately it's absolutely abhorrent, and I cannot believe that anybody thinks it's a good idea, but they're absolutely adamant and completely stuck on this fact. And unfortunately they are doing it legally, and they're using a legal loophole for puppies bred in the UK. They export them into Europe, where ear cropping is also illegal in about 25 different countries in European countries as well. So these puppies are either being sent a long way or they're being done illegally there. Yeah. They're cropping their ears. The Dobermans are just grim. They then have to stand them in these, they strap them up on the top of their head like this for weeks to make them stand up. So then not only do they chop the ears off, they then strap them to the top of their head and they chop the tails off just for good measure, bring them back into the UK and then sell them. And people want to buy them. And I find that whole concept just so disgusting. And then the second lot of dogs that are being done are bullies, so particularly American bulldogs, and they're again, not so many are bred and exported. A lot of them are bred abroad, cropped abroad, and they chop the ears off to a ridiculous degree. Like they've got these weird little stubby little ears, and they're being brought in. But there has been a few convictions in the UK of people doing it illegally, and I suspect far more people are doing that now, being convicted. Yes. Good. So vets are seeing cropped dogs. And vets, again, by the time the dog is in the practice, it's too late. We can't do anything about it. I, being me and doing what I do, if I see one, I'll often go, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's illegal. Where did it get done? And I promise you, without fail, the people go, oh, he's a rescue. We rescued him from Romania. He's a rescue. Yes. Yeah. Rescue. Yeah. Here's his passport. And you're like, really? Gosh, that's obviously you didn't want a dog with cropped ears, did you though? No, you just happened to rescue this poor cropped dog and you're like, this is just such rubbish. You're deliberately buying these dogs but hiding behind the veneer of rescue as an excuse because you know it's illegal. So I am now part of a campaign to try to get the importation of cropped dogs into the UK made also illegal, which will slam the door shut on a huge number of these cropped dogs and also make it much easier to identify the ones that are being illegally done in the UK.
Amazing.
And it's quite a nifty piece of legislation, quite easy to put into law. It's quite an easy one. It's a very easy one to enforce because all dogs should be examined when they come into the UK. I mean, it's basically a bloke opening the back of the van a lot of the time going, yeah, and shutting it again. But you're not going to be able to hide crop puppies that easily. And also to draw the public's attention to it, because there's a huge, whenever I share that piece of information online about ear cropping, people are absolutely revulsed. It's abhorrent. And the UK public in particular, as you know, really very much animal lovers. It's completely abnormal for us. Every so often you get the Americans, they're like, well, that's completely normal. Our dogs look like this. And you're like, well, they shouldn't. But, it's a slightly different attitude here. So there's a huge public swell of opinion against it once you point out what's happening. So I think a lot of people just look at a Doberman with a pointy ears or a bully breed with no ears at all and go, oh, that's a dog. And then they just walk on. And then when you say, actually, the reason it looks like that is because somebody knocked it out, chopped its ears off and woke it back up again. Hopefully it was knocked out. Unfortunately, I suspect sometimes they're possibly not.
I mean, they're being mutilated effectively. There's no other word for it. And I think our American friends are waking up to a lot of these things as well. If we think of declawing in cats, for example, which again is something that just blows my mind that is a thing, but that's being outlawed in a lot of different states. And I think there is a bit of a change. But if you've only ever seen a Doberman with pointy ears, you might not even know that that's actually a surgery. You might think that actually that is how they come out because that's the only ones you've ever seen. Kat, we could talk for hours and hours on all of these different things.
I certainly can talk for hours and hours, yes.
Well, I could listen to you for hours and hours as well, but I'm mindful of your time. Thank you so much for joining us. To close, because you've got so much out there, like I say, where's the best place for people to go to hear your message, find out more about you and the amazing work that you do?
Oh, thank you. So I've got a Facebook page called Kat the Vet. It's the same on Twitter, Kat the Vet, on Instagram as well, Kat the Vet. You can find my blogs and my website, katthevet.com. But I would also say, Alex, thank you very much for having me on. And also, if you're listening to this podcast or watching us, tell all your friends that the work that Alex is doing is actually really amazing. And the amount of stuff you've done on YouTube, particularly, your body of work is massive and so good. So I think, if you've watched this and liked it, please like and subscribe and spread the word about Alex as well, because the work he's doing is phenomenal and I'm really pleased to have been involved. So thanks ever so much.
Oh, well, you're very fine, very kind, Kat. I think we're both suckers for punishment and passionate about what we do. But I'd love to have you back at some point. I'm sure there'll be more terrible welfare things that we can talk about. But yeah, for now, thank you so much and take care.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot, Alex. Bye-bye.
Now, as you could tell, I could have spoken to Kat for hours. There's so many topics that she is passionate about and she's incredibly knowledgeable about. And hopefully we'll have her back on the show sometime in the not too distant future. But there were some real gems there. And it's such an important topic, getting that puppy, and having that first start, those first few weeks are just crucial to their long-term health and their long-term well-being. So I hope you learned something new, and I hope that it helps you avoid some of these really common pitfalls and traps that we can fall into if we're not aware of what we need to be looking for. Now, if you didn't quite catch everything, or you want to explore further into these topics and some of the links and information that Kat spoke about, or you want to connect with Kat, make sure you head over to the show notes where all the links will be there for you. And then finally, I'd love it if you could help spread the word about this vital topic, because especially at this time of year, people are thinking about buying gifts, they're thinking about bringing a new puppy into their life, and it's such an important topic that everybody deserves to know about. So if you could share this with your friends and family, post it on social media, Facebook, wherever it is you hang out, I'd really appreciate it, and so would all of their future puppies. So that's it from me. Until next time, I'm Dr. Alex. This is the Call the Vet Show. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Call the Vet. For full show notes and any links mentioned in today's show, head over to callthevet.org, where you can also submit your question to be featured on an upcoming episode. We'll see you next time.